Hey guys, welcome back. This is Emily with Telltale, and today I wanted to do a quick video on a book I thought was really interesting. It was very helpful to me for understanding a lot of social dynamics in a lot of classic literature. It is called The Season. I don't know if you can see that very well. See if my phone, there it is. The Season by Kristen Richardson. And it is a social history of the debutante ball. So coming out parties for young women when they were eligible for marriage. And they were huge, way back in the day. There are still some that go on today, but this book mostly focuses on what people did back, when marriages and alliances between families was a more popular thing to do. So, one of the things I like about this book, first of all, is it's very concise but thorough. This is not a long read. I have the digital version, and I think I read it in like maybe 2 or 3 days, and that was not consistent reading. I'm a pretty quick reader, though. I think a person could easily finish this book in a week. But it gives you a wealth of information from how debutante balls started, kind of how they evolved as, the new world kind of took on the whole, just, way of doing debutante balls, how Americans morphed it into their own thing, how they kind of bled back into European society despite, having eventually made themselves independent from Europe. And it's just a really great informational read. I feel like Kristen Richardson did a lot of research for this, and it shows. Without a lot of diaries left by women who are prominent in debutante society, we probably wouldn't have all the information we do. So this is kind of, I guess you would call this a feminist work, because it really delves into the issues and situations that a lot of young women had to deal with growing up. And I did not realize personally how intense the debutante balls were for young men and women, especially women. There were so many rules. There were the who's who's of societies who were on guest lists. People were eliminated. Like, it was very cutthroat. And it put a lot of pressure on women to basically be property to their fathers and honor their family by making good decisions on who their marital partner would be. And it even gotten to the point where it really didn't matter what the female decided on or who she was going to marry. Dads could legally nullify marriages if they didn't think they were going well or liked them, which I thought was like, whoa, that is really intense. And I knew always like it was taboo to get divorces and stuff, but like these alliances were pivotal to the making of most of the American and European economies, because it was always wealthy families who were trying to make alliances to keep wealth in the family and continue to have, I guess, the perpetuation of innovation in their companies or whatever they did, and just make sure they took care of their own, made sure everybody was secure, and that's all they cared about. This did result in a lot of like inbreeding in families and stuff, which was really kind of gross. And I don't know, it was a different time, I guess. So it's kind of interesting because I saw a lot of correlations between how debutante balls worked and how the royal family conducts their marriages, or did, at least back in the day. Now it's a little bit looser where people can marry, whoever, but there is still that concern of inbreeding element that was very prominent, especially in history, with some of our kings in Europe who were quite nuts. Anyway, so this book is really great because it takes you through the history it takes you through the changes as new worlds were discovered, new cultures were discovered, Europe, of course, colonizing everything. That changed the dynamics of the debutante ball. They talk quite a bit about the socioeconomic, uh, I guess you would say, segregation that this caused. They talked a lot about the, of course, very rooted in racism, trying to prevent daughters from marrying anybody who wasn't, white. Talks a lot about the Anglomania. And they, of course, do touch on how African American culture started to develop their own version of debutante balls to make their own high society, because there actually was still very high society Black America back then. While it was unusual and rare, it still happened, and they still were trying to, of course, keep wealth in the family, secure ties, that sort of thing. Very similar to what the white people were doing, but with more, I think, cultural significance than what white people were doing it for. So I just thought it was really concise. It was really great information. It made me understand a lot of the social dynamics of, like, Jane Austen's work, Charlotte Bronte, Emily Bronte, those ladies who had very, had female characters where this really was relevant to them. And it helped me understand how much pressure they were dealing with. And in fact, it does even go and explain why, like, the behavior of some of the mothers, or the behavior of some of the sisters who were, coming out and things like that, why that was so taboo, why that was so disrespectful, and why debutante society would consider that a high risk situation and potentially eliminate you from guest lists for debutante balls. Like, it was really cutthroat and crazy. So I liked that a lot about this book, because she goes through and, like, takes really relevant pieces of literature and alludes to situations and things like that, which make it very interesting. There's a lot of excerpts from diaries and things of real life people, a lot of real life case studies from these diaries and this work. So she makes it interesting. It doesn't feel like you're reading a textbook. It's not dry. It feels like there's storytelling going on. So you have where it's like, once upon a time, there's so and so, and she, at 16, her mother, sent her off to Europe for her coming out with some aunt, and those kinds of situations where you actually get, like, a face or a name to a situation. So it's not just telling you about, the dryness of all this. It tells you about these who's who, and it tells you about the people controlling the system, because there were people controlling this system, especially in bigger cities like New York and things like that. Like, this was like the big deal event every year, is making sure people got on the lists to get to these big city debutante balls. And down in Texas, they have their own debutante culture, which is fairly different from other areas, because, you've got the antebellum situation going on. So it does touch on that a lot. I thought she was also very thorough about how African American culture has taken it over. In St. Louis, she does talk about how there is a very obvious racism element, and that there were debutantes for African Americans that were in protest to what the white people were doing with their debutante balls. The secret societies associated with debutante balls, oh my goodness, that is just juicy. I wish she had delved into that a little bit more. But yes, there are secret societies who are conducting secret societies. Like, I don't know how secret they really are, but, like, they're pretty solid on protecting their guest lists and protecting their administration lists. So, like, they don't name drop at all. So it's kind of interesting and weird that they do that, but I found that really interesting and would have liked to know more, but I don't know that you can know more. You know what I mean? Like, that's a really hard situation, but I just thought that was fascinating, especially as someone who does like the potential stories that can come from conspiracy theories and things like that. That was one of those things that really piqued my interest intellectually. So I just thought this was a great read, because there is such a wealth of information that I didn't understand about times in society. If you are a person who really enjoys historical fiction or historical biographies, this is a really good book for you to read to understand, especially if it's focused in on females, and help you understand the pressures that females have in society during those times. And then, like, it also was really eye-opening because I didn't realize debutante balls are still happening today. And there is a revival of debutante balls specifically in communist countries right now, such as China and Russia, where they're kind of breaking into that category as well to kind of showcase these fascinating women. Of course, now it's not about making marriages, but it's basically like a pageant, which they talk about how they don't like to be compared to pageants, but it's so similar, where there's talent shows and there's, different, like, achievements that these women have had academically. Like, it is a little bit more holistically about the female for who she is and what she's accomplished, so it feels more like a celebration. But of course there's still controversy there, like you're toting them around like a piece of meat. So how is this any different than exploiting women in the past for social alliances? Now you're just exploiting women for their looks and their talents and all these other things. Like, it still could potentially be an exploitation. But that aside, it's very interesting to hear the little bit that she talks about how communist nations are starting to take this on as well, and how they're using it to showcase the brilliance in their culture and to empower women a little bit more, which I think is necessary. But I think also there is a lot of pressure which could be counteracting the empowerment of females. So this was a just fascinating read for me. Especially in context to classic literature. I think in order to fully understand the importance of classic literature, we have to also understand the social significance of certain situations. And I think the debutante balls, especially for women, are a huge part of their lives. It consumes a lot of their time, sometimes even years. It can cause situations like the celebutante, who was like, there was a female who was a celebutante. She was actually famous for being a debutante and being really reckless and kind of edgy for stupid things. Like, she dunked a donut in coffee, and apparently that's a big societal no-no. So she was in the newspaper for that. Like, how much pressure can you put on a female? But that was actually the beginning of kind of celebrities who become popular for nothing. Kind of like reality TV kind of popularity, where you just follow them around with a camera. And like, newspapers were doing this to people, especially high profile names, where they were just like paparazzi, just following them around, trying to find controversies and dig up stuff. And these people ended up becoming famous for doing nothing but live their lives. So that's kind of the start of what we have with like Paris Hilton and the Kardashians, who are famous just for living their lives and not really doing anything in particular, but being a high profile name. So I thought that was also an interesting piece of history, and how we haven't gotten over that yet, apparently, because we still eat up all that reality TV, and we still eat up like The Bachelor, which is basically like a debutante ball with one guy and, a bunch of women who are just trying to impress this dude, except the rules have changed now. Like, the rules are so different, and there were rule books and etiquette books back in the day that you followed to a T in order to be able to get invited to some of these situations. So, like, whoa. Read this book. It's phenomenal. I found it impressive, not dry, good storytelling, historically relevant, and relevant to women's history. So, if you're into that, great. If you're into classics and just want to know more about how romantic society was conducted, this is a great read. Super concise, super fast. So yeah, like, comment, let me know your thoughts on this if you read it, if you have any other pieces of literature that kind of delve into this, or any literature that helps you fully understand classic literature even better. Let me know. Comment, talk to us. We love to hear from you. So yeah, thanks for listening, guys. See you next time.